money in for doing this.
Yeah, they get a sponsor, Peter.
And yeah, I know. We're talking about changing, so setting up a company so we can get a sponsorship money coming in.
Yeah, I think you guys could land a couple good sponsors.
Yeah, the problem with doing it without corporate protection is it then looks as if the money's going in our pocket when in fact there's expenses to be paid and things like that. Right. Which one has to consider those first.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and I want to talk with Dave about that when he gets back.
Yeah, I think it's worthy.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know about I don't know who to get for sponsors, but I'm sure we can get some.
I think you could. I think you could land a couple for sure.
Yeah. And if we get like, even if it's a couple hundred a week, it's something that actually makes them, it actually puts a stockpile of money in a pot for doing things.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good idea. I think you need it.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to Talking Niagara on the 1st of August.
Morning, Niagara.
It was the 31st of July today, so it must therefore be the 1st of August today. Didn't even look at my calendar for that one. Yeah.
One more month of summer. Going fast.
Well, yeah. I don't know. What's going to happen with the summer? It looks like the last couple of days have been way too hot.
Very hot. Yeah, it's danger heat. Get to the point where the only place you could be is poolside or in air conditioning.
Yeah. Okay. So, and actually, I think poolside or air conditioning is where the regional finance staff need to be right now, because they need to cool off their proposed tax increases for 2025. They're looking at 8.72% for 25. Can you believe that?
Well, why wasn't that on the election ballot?
Yeah. Well, actually, remember, this is the staff. This isn't the elected people.
Yeah.
Right. This is the staff recommendation. So they had the budget committee, which is chaired by Wayne Reddekopp of the mayor of Fort Erie. And the presentation was given by Beth Brenz, who's the region's associate director of budgeting, planning, and strategy. So, and also on there to talk about it was Niagara Region's chief administrative officer, Ron Tripp. And the staff were basically trying to sell the tax increase as a necessary step in preserving Niagara Region's core funding. And they noted that proposed tax increases are supported by the municipality's corporate leadership team, meaning the key members of the city staff, right? And they pointed at provincial services. They said that provincial services that lessen development charges to encourage more home building are the key to the budgetary pressure. Although they do state that the province is expected to pony up some funds in order to offset some of the decreases in development charges. Actually, that's an important factor, that development charge stuff.
You knew this was going to trickle down to the municipalities or the region sooner or later, and here it is. So electing Doug Ford is going into your pocketbooks now, and it's going to hurt big time.
Well, that hurts, and that's wrong, I think, because the thing is that a lot of that money that's ponied up for developers is actually the reason it's paid, some of these, and they're not huge amounts of money. We're talking about if you're putting a development in, you might be talking about $10,000 or $20,000 worth, but for the bigger developments, you might be talking about $1 million on deposit. And the money is actually the reason you put the money into place is to show seriousness, that you're serious as a developer.
Yeah, so that's been taken away, and there's no vetting being done, and then we have big holes sitting in the ground like we do in Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And this is a trickle down from Doug Ford taking away those development fees, and what other way is there to do this? And I noticed in this article, it says that the Niagara region has not looked for savings when they're asking for this increase.
Yeah, and that's troublesome to me, right?
Yes. So before you ask for an increase, your first thing is to go to accounting and see if we can find some savings.
Yeah, and that bothers me a lot. It bothers me that they seemingly haven't gone through the entire book and said, hey, we can save this here. Typically the type of savings that can work, and I know you as a kind of a person who comes from practical, your background being in industry, would kind of have a bit of a bit of a probably tough issue with some of these. But sometimes what you have to do is put off buying that new truck for a year or two.
Yeah, you're going to have to make some cuts to find savings, and it has to be done. I mean, we are in a position right now where this was dumped on the region and dumped on the municipalities, which means it's going to be dumped on us, right? Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. They should have started looking for savings right away. They should have also been writing to Doug Ford asking if the numbers are right and if the numbers are wrong, because I believe Doug Ford's numbers have been wrong all along. And so the money that is starting to fly is money that shouldn't be flying because his numbers are not right. And I asked the city council to question the numbers and question all this and say they disagree with Doug Ford to try and stop this from happening, because this is going to cost us.
And a lot of the reason for these development funds is basically to ensure that when you have developers who present to City Hall, they put up a block of money, and typically they've already taken on board, they've already made commitments about hooking up water and sewage, for example. There's a particular housing development that was going on near the railway line up at I forget the name of the road, but up the Dorchester Morrison area, behind the other side of the railway tracks, and they basically built the hookups from the sewage system well in advance of actually putting up their first home in that block. Right?
Yeah, and one would think that would be required, right? You want to be ahead of the wave. You don't want to be, always lagging behind and then having stalls and stuff like that. But I think we knew this was going to be a mess. Municipalities should have been questioning this all along since the last election and trying to find out who's going to make up for this loss of money.
I could accept that if you're it's a standard thing that has always been going on. There's a deposit put down, there's a deposit, and it's an amount that's strictly calculated. Now, if, for example, you buy a plot of land and you're going to build one home on it, I'd argue that the $10,000 deposit you're going to put on that one home, that's something you probably should get back, because that would help you as a single home developer build that home. Right. Your chances of getting through that may well be significantly better if you got that 10,000 in your pocket, right, as a single home developer, right? But when it comes to massive developments like those tower blocks that are not being built, then you need to pony up some money, because you need to, you've got the money, you wouldn't be a developer otherwise. You have the money, you've got to just pony it up and, go for it.
Yeah, they should have figured out right away if Doug Ford's changes are going to take away millions of dollars. You got to figure out where that shortfall is going to come from, and you got to start making money somewhere else to make up for that shortfall, or you have to do some cuts, one or the other.
Yeah, and that actually has an impact right across the province. It's not just That's not just Niagara region.
No, because we're looking at this for every region and every municipality now. And the municipalities are the basic ones that are going to feel the burden of this, right?
Yeah.
Shit rolls downhill, and this is rolling all the way down to us, right? And
the irony, of course, is that a lot of these deposits are paid back, but the deposits are not paid back when you don't do the work.
Right.
And which basically means that if there's if you've got a 70-story building that you promised to build and you put $1 million deposit in with the city, right? That $1 million, if you don't build it within a specific amount of time, that $1 million deposit becomes city funds then.
Yeah, and I never read anything on the wastewater treatment plant, but I bet you the cost of that is in here somewhere too.
Yeah, possibly. Well,
that's
actually,
that's going to be a huge project that's going to cost a lot of money in the long run for us, and that's going to help raise our taxes too.
There's an element of that which will go into both the city budget, our city budget, and as well as the region's budget, I suspect.
Yeah, and you know that those are money pits that are always going to cost more than we think they are.
Well, the problem is that we need that wastewater treatment plant, that new one, right?
Yes. With the amount of new homes and new buildings proposed, there's no chance that we could operate without it.
Yeah, there's no denying it, right?
Yeah. So, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I get the feeling it's all going to come out of our pockets.
Yeah, and that's a problem that I have with a lot of this, is that it seems to hurt the people at the front, who pay their property taxes more than it does anybody else.
Yeah, because we got many people on fixed incomes, right?
Yeah,
and for example, any kind of raises and any kind of money like that is the bottom line of your fixed income. And you don't have the ability to make up that extra money if you're on a fixed income because you're retired or if you're on disability, right? You don't make the extra money when you need to because things have gone up. Yeah,
and they're talking about so we're staring down at the moment a 12.59% proposed increase for water and wastewater rates, a 5.9% increase in waste management special levy, a 6.65% special levy for Niagara Transit. So we've got to be looking at these and breaking them down a bit more.
Yeah,
looking for savings somewhere down the line.
That term special levy usually means that it's a one-time thing, and that means that money should have already been found probably.
But again, often with special levies, they often tap into provincial budgets somewhere. There's a special levy, a support fund, if you like. That's not what it's called, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
There's a concept that
they've been dipping into that year after year.
Yeah, that's what I have the problem with, though, is often some of these we got special levies every year.
Yeah, and when you dip into it year after year, that money disappears, and then there's no more special fund to dip into, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think this was, like I said a long time ago, Doug Ford did no costing on his election platform. And this comes back to bite you every time when you do no costing. No costing means you're shooting from the hip and you're going to pay for it down the road. And this is where we are.
Yeah. Hey, isn't it normal, though, that it's the Conservatives saying people like the NDP don't do any costing on their plans?
Yeah, but I was really shocked at the last election when Doug Ford did absolutely no costing for any of his ideas. And we elected him. And I was shocked over that he got elected without doing any costing, because there's been so many things that he's had to backtrack on because of that. And then this comes down the pipe. And this is getting shoved down our throats because there's no money anywhere else to make up for this.
Well, and the worst of it is, of course, this comes at a time when everybody's feeling the pinch. Forget property tax increases for a moment. It's like you're already getting hammered everywhere else in the economy, right?
Yeah, we got the inflation that's still not controlled. We still, COVID financially destroyed a lot of things, and we're still catching up on that.
Yeah, financially, COVID killed a lot of businesses.
Sure, there's still a lot of businesses that got to pay back those loans, right?
Yeah. Well, actual
like
fact, many of them didn't pay back those loans. They went out of business.
Yeah, and it's like we said yesterday. All this stuff is catching up, and we haven't caught up yet, right?
Yeah.
We as people have not caught up to the downfall of all the stuff from COVID and the inflationary thing, right? And we're paying the price. We're paying the price for everything, and then when you add this on, this is just going to hurt all the more.
In talking about inflation, you see, when, for example, I was listening to an ad this morning on the radio, and one of the ads said, like, I forget what it was that they were advertising, but only $9.99 a pound. I think it was a meat. And I'm like, only $9.99 a pound. Like, whoa, are you serious? That sort of stuff we'd have probably, 10 years ago, we'd have been complaining if it was $5 a pound.
Yes. Yeah. Our food's more than doubled, right? In a lot of instances. And never came back down.
Yeah, never came back down. So when you get things like that have happened, is sure, our inflation went up to I don't know, officially about 8%, although unofficially, when you've got prices of stuff doubling, realistically it's a lot more than that.
Yes.
And when you had essentially the prices of rent over the last 5 years have quadrupled.
Yes, right? Rent and housing is out of reach.
Is out of reach for some people.
Yeah, and inflation adds on to that. Then now add on these extra taxes and these extra property taxes, and a person on a fixed income is swallowed up.
And again, okay, so maybe when you go into the supermarket, the loaf of bread is the same price as it was last month as it was 3 months ago, but it's still 50% higher than it was 3 years ago.
And Loblaws and all those other companies have admitted that they fixed those prices, and yet never put them back down.
Yeah.
They even admitted it in a court of law, but never put them back down. So it's the same old. Every time we as a people lose something, we never get it back, right? Yeah. And that's why we gotta make stands and start fighting a little more, I think, because once you lose it, you never get it back, and that's a big problem.
Well, part of the problem is, as you were talking about this, I was thinking to myself, do we need like a demonstration when they have the budget meeting in the fall at the regional council? Because there's a lot of people hopping mad about the fact that, if 8.72 is added to the regional budget, it makes it virtually impossible for any city budget to go, to be less than that.
Yeah, and they're going to have a really rough time. And they could have dumped it down to the municipalities, and then that could have been dumped down to us that way too, right?
Yeah.
And either way, the trickle down is going to hit us, right?
Yeah.
And I still find it really disturbing in this article that they said they have done nothing to find any savings on this when they knew this was coming down the line. All municipalities knew this was coming down the line.
Yeah, exactly. We know this is coming down the line. And I know that Niagara Region has a reputation of, Niagara Independent has a reputation of being hard on those that spend our public money on public purse. But they have a right to be.
Yeah, because Niagara Region itself has been exponentially raising rates over and over again all the time.
And we've heard people like Bob Gale, speak many times about the need for cost savings, and he's just like, it's almost like they put him in a box in the corner and say, "Yes, Mr. Gale, just talk away in there."
Yeah, he's got $1 million, multi-million-dollar corporation. I think he knows where to find savings when you need to, and he probably knows the small places to look to find those savings, and that's what we need.
Absolutely. We need somebody.
We need some serious accounting crunching happening, and that always seems to be a problem with government, because anytime accounting tells government something, they never seem to like to listen to them.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think that Bob Gale could certainly find some savings somewhere.
Somebody should have been starting this project soon as they knew Ford was going to do this. When they were aware that we don't know where the money's going to come from, instead of sitting on your hands and just saying, okay, we're just going to raise the taxes without finding any savings, is not acceptable.
Yeah, it's not acceptable. And the thing is, whichever way, one of the big problems is that with municipalities, you offer services, but those services cost money, irrespective of what those services are, right? Services cost money. Services can make you money. So services could be cost neutral if they make enough money. But the trouble is that they still have a budget in order to make money. And how do you actually put that equation into place? Because essentially our municipalities offer services for local people. Well, in our case, we get tourists as well use those services, but that happens everywhere, right?
Yes.
But we get services for local people, and we actually have to bear the cost for services for local people.
Yes, and I don't know, calculating those things ahead of time would help a lot, instead of waiting until we have to dump it on people. I'm not understanding the process here. As soon as you're losing money in this area, you have to start finding money in this area. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job.
Yeah. And the municipalities need to be taking that, they need to be taking that on board. And, if that's making a public statement to Doug Ford, make that public statement.
I think they should come out. I asked City Council a long time ago to write a letter to Doug Ford saying that his numbers are wrong and can he relook at them before this comes down the pipe and we get dumped on, right? And our City Council refused to disagree with Doug Ford. As a matter of fact, they didn't write any letters at all against what he was doing. And this is the price we pay for it.
Well, you see, at the end of the day, Mr. Ford has changed his opinion on certain things because other people have written to him, right? Yeah. And it would seem that this would be an obvious one that the city should write to him.
This is one the region and the cities should write to him. I mean,
well, not just our region, but every other region or county there is out there.
Yeah, and the municipalities should have been writing long ago, questioning where the money's going to come from and is this going to hurt us? When I wrote the letter to City Council, Lori Lococo wrote back to me and said, I've been asking the same questions and I'm getting no answers. Yeah. So no answers is creating the problem we're at today. And I'll never understand that, because from day one after the election, they knew that we had lost money. And we had to figure out what to do with that.
Yeah. And this has got to be, we got to turn this around. We got to get the budgets back. And the thing is, I think that I think largely the money, the money should be out there somewhere, but it's just in the wrong pocket.
Yeah. They're not going to find all that money, and that we're going to pay a price somewhere. here.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's not just us, it's it's every city or municipality across the province. And it's more likely also every, other municipalities elsewhere as well.
Yeah, Pickering thinks they have problems right now with their city council. Wait till this comes down the pipe.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to Pickering. Okay. So a quick one here that Israel is claiming that they killed a senior Hezbollah leader in a strike on Beirut on Tuesday. They identified Fouad Shuka as a senior advisor to Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, and is said to control Lebanese terror group military activities, precision weapons program, etc., and that they claim they killed him. But hey, it looks like we're heading for another front on the Israel war.
This is a very serious thing they've done. They've sent a message to Iran, and they said, we know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and we're not going to allow it anymore. That's a serious message. Now they're going to have to fight the war on 3 fronts, right? They're going to have Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they're going to have their own people fighting them in their country, and now they're going to have Iran doing it too. It always was Iran doing it and pulling the strings, the puppeteer. They're the puppeteer of all these people that are fighting the Jewish people, and what a message they have sent. And I hope they're prepared for what's coming, because it's not going to be good.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, one woman was killed and at least 35 people were injured on this strike. And they're basically claiming that 12 children were left dead in the Golan Heights because of an attack by Hezbollah there last week, or on Tuesday, sorry.
So the Jewish community, they sure do have a wicked security team to be able to know what's going on in Iran like that within not less than 11 days after that bombing took place and killed the children in Israel. I think it took less than 24 hours for them to put this together and kill the leader that organized all this, right? And they killed him on Iranian soil. And that is a huge message in my mind. And they've just created a three front war for themselves, and that's going to be a hard one to fight, because if they decide to coordinate and everybody attacks at once, I fear for Israel.
Well, in fact, actually, Israel is in a very awkward situation anyway, because they're isolated. They're isolated as a community in a largely Islamic Middle East, and they should be seeking peace, not war.
Well, they've just created a bigger war, and I think Iran's going to retaliate. They've stated it today in a statement that they are going to retaliate, and it's not going to be a good thing, that's for sure. The people of Israel are going to need the United States help on this for sure, because it's going to be coming in from three areas.
Yeah.
I hope they're not coordinated enough to do what they can do, because Israel will be in huge trouble.
Yeah. I'm not wishing for trouble at all. But yeah, I was laughing because what you're saying is probably true.
Whew. As soon as I seen it and read it, I looked at my wife and said, this could be World War III. This is a scary thing happening. They just opened the floodgates. And how can you not, though, right? Someone bombed a soccer game that children were playing on, and you have to retaliate, right? You have to take care of your people, and you have to protect your country. So they had no choice to do what they did. But boy, to do it the way they did it was a very bold message.
Yeah. All right. Well, good morning, Karen. Welcome
Karen.
to the show. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then the question that I have with a lot of this stuff is that you're sorry, you were just saying opening shots to World War III potentially. Well, let's be honest about this. I read the statistic, and and for my shame, I didn't actually follow it up to ask where was the proof. But there was a statistic I heard that was but in the 1980s, we'd had 18 days of peace since World War II ended. Only 18, right?
Wow, right?
And that is basically because there's been war going on in pretty well every part of the world ever since, right? So we've been at war even during peacetime. We are a very much a warring peoples, and we are at war. The whole world has been at war for such a long time.
Yeah, I hate war. I really do. I just don't. I never see any sense in it. If we had like an alien invasion, let's say, right? Would the world pull together and protect each other, or would they say, "Oh, I'm just going to protect my country"?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because when you look at the filmdom answer to that, with things like what was it, Independence Day, that film, that they did the world pull together, right?
Right.
But I don't think we would. I really, my belief is no, I'm going to protect my bit.
And I believe you're correct. The bigotry is that big.
Yeah. I cannot for one second believe that, for example, if saving the world meant that they had to club together and kill this alien invasion ship that was hitting Chad in Africa, in Central Africa, I don't think the Americans or the Russians would even bother.
What a frightening thought, right?
Yeah. But the world's future depended upon saving Chad.
Yeah, and that's a frightening thought, and it's almost like the hypocrisy of the International Space Station, right? You got the International Space Station. Are the Americans and Russians really working together?
Yeah, basically they've been looking for their own glory, and in the meanwhile, the Chinese are basically Chinese and Indians are blazing ahead of them all.
Yeah, well, these two are battling amongst themselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that's a good thing, and
Yeah.
and the World War is on the brink, and nobody's doing anything to stop this, right?
Yeah.
United States is there to protect Israel, but they're not in the war, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be a scary next couple weeks to see what happens. Maybe Iran will just maybe Iran will just pull out an assassination out of their hat, and assassinate somebody in Israel of high command, and then that'll be that. But I doubt it.
You mean they'll suddenly top off Netanyahu? I doubt it.
Something, if they assassinated somebody at a high rank there and then left it at that and didn't start a war, that's what I'm hoping for, even though that's not a nice thing in the eyes of anybody. But
yeah, I know.
That would be better than just an all-out war, right? And
well, the other thing is, of course, yeah. But you see, you talk about that, and that's like, yeah, and I understand where you're coming from. But there's been talk about, hey, that's exactly what was needed with Putin, for the last 3 years, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not happened. And Putin is as large and bold in public as ever before, and he's and nobody's even got a drone anywhere near him.
Yeah, and Trump only got the ear.
Okay, let's move on. While you mentioned Trump. So hours after, okay, so Trump and Harris is becoming quite a showdown, because hours after, oh, stop doing that. Right, hours after Trump questioned whether Kamala Harris was truly a black woman, she slammed the former president for his racist remarks. She was actually speaking with a sorority, and his remarks have been about before the National Association of Black Journalists, which claimed all of a sudden she made a turn and became a black person. The same old show of divisiveness and disrespect. That's what she's claiming. It's the same old show of divisiveness.
Yeah, it's not a shocker. You know how he is. He just says stuff so he could get the spotlight back on him. His bigotry.
When is the spotlight? Okay, so when he stood since September, since he lost the presidency, when has the spotlight not been on him?
Hey, well, since Harris announced
on the papers every day.
Yeah, since Harris has announced her election, the spotlight's been on her more than it's been on Donald, and Donald cannot stand that.
Yeah, and now he's saying. She happened to turn black, and now she wants to be a black. I don't know if she's Indian or black.
What a statement, eh?
Yeah, honestly.
What a statement. So
she's made it clear. It's been clear right from the outset. I don't think anybody's been fooled that she's half Indian, half black. That's always been the way we know it to be, right?
She went to one of the biggest black colleges in the United States to get her education. I think it's obvious what her ethnic background is. She never hid her ethnic background before.
No.
And I believe it's going to help her immensely. I mean, you get the women vote, you get the black vote, you get the... she's going to get the color vote. I think Trump is in a lot of trouble and he's grasping at straws.
Well, actually, the interesting thing about that is when it comes to some of the what they call the battleground states, she's actually making significant progress in those battleground states in the polls.
Yeah, you got that 10% of people in the middle that don't know who they're going to vote for. And I think she's going to win those 10% very easily. As Donald Trump keeps going back to his old ways of bigotry and stuff like that, I think it's going to bite him. I think his words bit him when he went to this thing, and the black journalist used his words against him, which made him very angry, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing...
Her first question was using his words against him, and he went on a rant that didn't make very much sense after that.
Yeah, and the thing is that it was always we characterized this whole question, and I still can't. I'm not calling the election yet at all. I've normally called it by kind of even before the primaries had done, I've normally called it, right? And I can't predict this. I don't know which way it's going to go.
No,
right?
No,
I really don't.
No, and I think the whole world is on edge over it. I mean, everybody's waiting and watching, right? I fear for another 4 years of Donald Trump. I really think it's going to be bad for Canada.
Well, I get you. I understand where you're coming from. And there's a lot of Canadians that do feel that. But there's also a lot of Canadians who feel that Trump would be a good thing for Canada.
Right? How they could ever think that, I would never know.
Yeah, but you've got a particular viewpoint, Mike. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I know that you have a specific viewpoint, and we talked about why you have that viewpoint before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not making that decision. I'm not saying that those people who believe he's good for Canada are wrong either.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take an independent view on this and looking, because I'm not American. The way I'm impacted by the American election, whether I'd be in Britain or in Canada, I'd be impacted by the American election because of its foreign policy.
Yeah, and that's the thing that everybody, should be thinking about, is that their foreign policy changed so much under Donald Trump, and then Joe Biden took over and changed a lot of it back. But if he gets another 4 years and he goes in with a vengeance, those foreign policies are going to come back with a vengeance, and Canada is going to be in those crosshairs.
Right. I'm wondering as to whether are they going to build a northern wall.
Yeah, well, I would hope so, because that would, when their civil war starts, I would like nothing more than be protected against them.
When their civil war starts. Yeah, you see, actually, and you're not the only person to talk about American Civil War. There's been a lot of discussion about that, including, what was it, a Guardian journalist, political commentator who's already pegged it for 2040.
Well, I've never seen politics the way it is today, especially in the United States, where Republicans and Democrats are of the same country, but they're treating each other like enemies.
I
disagree with that 100%, because their job is to work together for the people, no matter what party they're in.
Yeah, and part of a constitution is, if, for example, there was a federal election tomorrow and the Communist Party got into power, right? Yeah. Out of the blue, the Communist Party got into power. You might kind of go, well, I don't like the Communist Party. They were proposing this and this and this, but the saving grace is that we've got a constitution that means that in 4 years' time we can vote them out and we can put Canada back on course, type thing. And the reason I'm doing that is just to be controversial, right? The reason I'm saying that is to be controversial, because at the end of the day, what we have in Canada is a constitution that means that certain things can be done and certain things cannot be done, right? So It doesn't matter the color, the political colors of the incoming party, they have to live by the Constitution. That is what I always believed was the saving grace of America, because America has the strongest constitution in the world.
Well, they used to. But now they've brought into question so many things about their constitution. They've confused themselves, it seems. And nobody seems to be correcting anything or changing anything, because it's the same foes at battle, right? So the same foes at battle don't correct what they're battling, right? I think you got to get rid of the two-party system, and I think that two-party system is eating the United States alive.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Gary makes the thing, another 4 years of an open border, let that sink in. He's talking, of course, about the southern border, but we were talking about the northern border.
Yeah. Our border is all I care about. And the southern border is a horrible mess, and it always has been. And it's really hard to.
I don't think putting a wall up makes any difference, to be quite honest.
Well, it's really hard to tell someone from Guatemala that your life's not in danger living there, so go back, right? There are hard arguments to win places that are placing their children and their livelihood at risk, and you and I would do the same thing, and we would do anything for our children to get them out of that situation. So what a hard thing for them to do. I've spoken to people that have come from places like Guatemala, and the hard trip they got to get to Canada is an unbelievable movie within itself. Frightening things. They had to bribe their way out of danger. You can't get out of those countries unless you have some money stashed away to bribe your way through a lot of the borders, right?
And we were talking about Venezuela the other day, yesterday, weren't we?
Yes. And
that's another march of refugees.
So how do you tell those people they're wrong and they got to go home?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a hard situation for everybody to be in, and obviously United States needs to start working with Mexico and other countries that people are leaving to go there to try and figure out better ways for the system to work. Because right now, to date, of course, the Biden government screwed up on all their immigration policies, and that was obvious too. That they didn't do much until the end of his term, right? And he did try. You got to give him credit. He did try. He did try to fix it in the way the United States works. He went through all the channels and tried to fix it, and Donald Trump put a stop to it so that he could make it an election issue. So I give credit for that, but there's nothing you can really do about this other than try to attack the issues of why people are leaving those countries.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so Alicia Mary says, let's take care of our own first. And Randy West basically says Canada and US can't take on everyone from everywhere, which is exactly what you were saying, really, there. You know, we're seen as the panacea of where people need to go, but in fact, actually, we can't take those people on. You know, Europe can't take them. US and Canada can't take them. It's a big problem.
Yeah, and how do you fix it?
Yeah.
How do you fix it?
Karen was talking to a woman from Guatemala who was talking about her husband being kidnapped. Yeah, big problems. Yeah, absolutely. And Gary's, I agree. For some reason, we're not going to. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand how United States can blame any president for what's going on that southern border, other than, you know, you have to work with the other countries to try and come up with solutions.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and the solutions have got to come from changes in South America, not, you know, because the problem lies is that for many South Americans, the streets of Los Angeles are paved with gold.
Yeah, and let's face it, you know, you bring in someone from another country here in Canada right now, and you can't afford to buy a house. What promised land is there for them, right?
Yeah.
They are living in peace, however, and living in peace is half the battle that they're trying to escape, right? That is a huge thing. We do have our oceans to protect us from most immigrations, so everything else comes from the south.
And again, Randy's saying you fix it by putting your borders back up, and then you support actions against those other leaders, like the one in Venezuela, who are clearly corrupt. Absolutely, Randy. Legal immigration I have no issue with. The issue is illegals coming in without being vetted, etc.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And again, if you have an overflow of people coming into your country, where do you put them while you're making these decisions?
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to another issue. So Pickering, warring councillors in here are facing trading accusations while police are watching council meetings. When I first read this, I thought, is this Niagara?
Yeah, and you know, it's one counselor that's ranting and raving about issues that we all talk about, right?
Yeah.
And she blanket emailed everybody, which goes against protocol for everything, right?
Yeah.
And she blanket emailed everybody about her problems, and in that blanket email, that's against protocol for most city councils. You're supposed to go through procedures before you do stuff, right? So she's caused a lot of controversy in the way she's trying to address the issues.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, this has gone, you know, so it's almost, can we say this? Hey, Carolyn Iannone, come back, all is forgiven. Because it seems like Carolyn,
yes.
for example, was not one of these that would have just emailed everybody. You know, she had a thing to say. I grant that. You know, but she wouldn't have broken protocol like this.
Yeah, and you know, she's calling the secondary plan motion of drag shows and pride parades, calling them both adult live performances. Um, I don't disagree with her. I, you know, um, on some of these things, she's right. I think, or at least she has a legitimate
But it's not
conversation to
about.
be had.
But it's not about the question now is not about whether her view is right or wrong. It's the how she's gone about making her point.
Yes. So we got a system in place where, you know, you have protocol, right? And she threw protocol out the window.
Yeah.
So now
And
people are
protocol is
already
there. Yeah, and protocol is there for a damn good reason.
sure. And because mistakes have been made before, and that's why rules and regulations are usually made, right? So it's almost like a stop sign's always put up after somebody dies, right? We don't make rules and regulations unless something's already happened to put them there. And that's why you have the protocol, was because mistakes were made before like this, and they caused bigger mistakes. So she didn't follow any protocol at all, and she just did it her way. And that's most of the problem here.
Yeah, and you know, and okay, so protocol, you know, protocol does matter, but at the end of the day, there's allegations again in this particular instance of the mayor being misogynist, right? And Mayor Kevin Ash, as he said, you know, she claimed that he has a temper and alleged she'd chosen not to attend the annual gala because she believed that that his temper was being directed towards women.
Yeah, how many times can you pull that card out, though, right? I believe that he had a temper, and his temper might not have been because she's a woman, but more because she refused to follow protocol.
Well, and then there's another councillor, also a lady, who's saying, "I respect the office of the mayor. I respect Kevin. He's no misogynist." Right? Everyone on council is done with your behavior.
Yeah. So what do you do when that's the situation, right? You can't get rid of the councillor. They suspended Caroline Iannuni, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's another way around it. But if she's not really wrong on the issues that she's bringing up, but she's wrong on the protocol, then you have to address that, right?
He needs to find another way of doing it.
Yeah, and we have let's face it, we do have a bureaucracy that's hard to break through too, right?
True.
Sometimes bureaucracy is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Where you can't get your point across at all, and you're left no choice but to do something outrageous.
Yeah, and it's just that sometimes you know, I guess that you know, if I look back in my history, probably the 20-year-old of me might have said, "Yeah, do the outrageous thing."
Yeah, and that's might be what we're facing, a new city councilor that just thinks the rules stink and thought she'd do it a different way, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that different way will not work. It will cause a rift, and but maybe it'll put her issues out there. You never know, right? It might be the one thing that got her issues out there that you couldn't get it out any other way.
Yeah, and she's saying that, you know, I feel a certain group email to every councillor in Durham isn't the way to do it, said one of them. And yeah, I tend to agree. But again, sometimes you do have to actually agree everybody to get anybody on board.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do a blanket email so that others don't get left out of the loop. Other times I'll do a blanket email so that they could see that others are being let known what's going on. So the blanket email has different purposes.
But it's okay for you because you're not a member of city council.
Right. And that's what I was going to get at. I said, but I don't have to follow protocol. And sometimes I do things so that it does stir the pot or stir the hornet's nest, right?
And one of the things I was going to ask about this morning and completely forgot is the oil slick. But that feeds in here, you know, because obviously when you discover and you're looking at oil slicks, and especially if you discover the source of it, I know you'd be on the horn too, City Council. You'd be, MECP and City Council. You'd be saying this is the source of it, and this is the reason why, because you'd be showing your photographs.
Yeah, I just finished doing that the other day, as a matter of fact, and today I'm going to be emailing City Council and letting them know, and Regional Council for that matter, that our test results have shown that this was an oil or a grease. It would have cost about $350 more to determine what kind of oil or grease it was, and we didn't have the money on hand to do that. But we do have a definite determination that it is an oil or a grease that was in the water.
But you still don't know where it came from.
Correct. I know it comes from the right-hand pipe when you're facing Don Murray Street, and that feeds about 10 to 12 different factories.
Yeah, I get you.
But it is isolated to that, and that's pretty good. We brought it down to that, and we figured that the ministry and the city should be able to find it from there, and it's 3 weeks since then. But yes, I will contact city councilors and regional councilors with that information and update them with a blanket email.
Well, yeah, but again, we were talking about that. It's like, it's different for you. You're a member of the public. You can email 150 people in that email, put it into Doug Ford if you wish,
Actually, I do. but that's a strategy on my half, to let everybody know that I'm not letting them out of the loop, and to also let them know how many different people know about this, right?
Well, how many of those factories that exist, the 10 factories that you say exist on that edge of the pipe, how many of them have you let them know that you're on their case?
Well, I was tempted to go door to door with a letter to try and tell them what we're doing as a community to try and find this, because apparently the Ministry of Environment doesn't have the power to go door to door like that. Now, they're the officers of the environment, and I don't understand how they don't have the power to go door to door to say, hey, it's one of these 12 factories. We've got it isolated. We're letting you know that we're coming aboard to look. I mean, they should have the right to do that.
I was going to say that, hey, usually if you go to the company's website, you can find emails. And if you kind of go to and you call them up and you say, hey, I want to send a brochure to somebody, an email brochure to somebody with a likely story that's got nothing to do with the issues. Who do I send it to? And then you get so they'll say Joe Smith, and the type of email, how the email is laid out, they show you that. Now you find out who's the head of the company, and you email it using the format.
Yeah, and I'm tempted to do that, but then at the same note, they might just stop doing what they're doing, and you'll never find who did it, right?
But surely that's surely, but though that is the aim that we've got to get.
And that's what I was just going to say, that's the ultimate goal, is to get it to stop, and that's why I think the MECP should be blanketing, emailing all those corporations that are attached to this storm pipe, and tell them that there's a problem that we're looking into, and we'll be knocking on your door.
You can do corporate searches, which get you information, right? And may even get you email information. But of course, the challenge with corporate searches is they cost money.
Yeah, and so why isn't the MECP allowed to do this as an officer of the environment? Yeah. I'm really confused that they get stripped of powers here. If the MECP cannot do this, how are they going to find it? Well, they're working in conjunction with the city, and the city's trying to find it through the wastewater treatment plant. Apparently, and obviously, this is taking a very long time. So I will always blanket email in these situations, and I know if I was part of city council, I would not do it that way. I'd be going through the protocols.
Yeah. And the thing is, I get you blanket emailing, and for example, and I'm no accusations here. For example, what might happen is that for example, it goes into Victor Peterangelo's box, and he just hits the great big X button on the top of the screen, gets rid of it, and it goes into Laurie Lococo's box, and she's like all over this, right?
Yes.
And that's the way it's going to be. And there's no accusations made there. It's just that's the way on any individual issue that certain people on council are going to go, I've got no interest in this. They click the delete button, and others will go, I'm very much interested in this. I'm putting it to the pile for future evidence that I need about whatever they're working on.
Yeah, and there's several reasons for me to do a blanket email, and that is to mostly let people know what's going on, and they cannot say that I've left them out, right?
Yeah.
That's mostly the reason I do it. I'll email to people that I know politically we don't agree with, just so that they can't say, why didn't I get this?
Yeah. I know. The challenge, of course, and the big, just think of city councillors. You must get hundreds, if not thousands, of emails a day.
Every day.
Yeah. And you don't have staff to answer them.
No, that's time consuming on your part. And, some councillors are unbelievable. They pretty well answer as many as they can. And like you said, other councillors, not a word, not a peep, not a blink. So it depends on the person and what they want to know, right?
Well, I wrote to the mayor because of the city, city not following certain protocol, and the fact that because of the protocol that they carried out, it means that people get identified. That you actually, when you're at the meeting, you have to actually, and they're still doing it, right? At the meeting, you have to say who you are and where and why you're there, right? I'm not allowed on public airways because of Law Society rules to tell you my address, right? Tell anybody my address. I'm not permitted to do so, right? Yet people are forced into saying rules, and the situation is that you actually on the tape you're saying, I'm John Smith, and I live at whatever address, and I believe this is wrong, for whatever reason. Whether you're right or wrong, I don't care. That's not the point here. The point here is that then somebody later on finds, oh, that's John Smith. I've been looking for him for 15 years, and I now know he lives at this address. I'm sorry, City Council. You have no right when you put it up to YouTube, that information must be removed. Sure, John Smith is on there. I'm John Smith. There's a bleep out for the rest of that information.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that. Because
I've written to him about the protocol on that, and I think it stinks.
And what was the answer?
The answer came there, none.
None.
I
find that disturbing. That's a topic.
And I've written to him on 4 separate occasions about this.
It's a topic on information and privacy that should be protected. The government goes out of their way of protecting information and privacy above and beyond for anybody that works with them.
I would have produced a motion if I'd been elected. A motion would have come up in my first 100 days to correct this.
Right.
And I would have embarrassed them if they hadn't have corrected this.
It's a good idea to protect people's privacy. Because it's a major issue. I mean, I was a night auditor. If someone would ask my name, I wouldn't tell them it's Mike Cushman. I just tell them Mike, right? You don't give them your full name. You don't, then they could look up your address, your phone number, and find you, right? So, so it's just an example of how you protect your information and privacy. When you're in a workplace, you don't give your full name. You just give your first name, right?
And again, there's a lot of protocol in workplaces that are backed up by law.
Right.
For example, I call your workplace and I say, I know Dave Wheeler used to work for you, right? Do you have his current address? And absolutely not. I may have your current address, but we're not permitted to give it to you Right. You know, is the answer,
and
right?
not even permitted to talk about his employment here.
Absolutely.
So like,
yeah, absolutely. So we can neither confirm nor deny that Dave Wheeler used to work here.
Well, it's even like, look how strong information and privacy has gotten to the point where you don't even bring a doctor's note in anymore, right?
Well, but there's a logical reason for that, because hey, the last thing you need to be doing is actually going to the doctor when you're sick, when you're coughing your lungs up.
Yeah, but when it's gotten to the point that your information and privacy is protected that strongly, then what the statement you made of what's happening at city council when you're addressing them is a big issue.
Yeah.
You know, if it's not a big issue, they wouldn't be protecting information and privacy like they do, right?
Yeah. And, you know, that, you know, for the live broadcast, I get it that you've got, you know, in fact, actually, the protocols are, you know, maybe the sign-in sheet needs to be clear, and that, hey, I'm Mr. Smith, right? You can't lie about your name. I'm Mr. Smith. My information is in the sign-in sheet, and that's all you need to say, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in one of the neighboring properties on it.
And you know, that's something that happens every day that's totally overlooked. So
yeah. And people give away too much information. And, you know, okay, I'm not saying, you know, hey, most people, there's not an issue. Most people don't really care about the, you know, if they're giving away that information, they don't really care. Right. But some people, you know, people have a right to privacy.
100%. And especially, you know, they could be hiding from somebody that tried to kill them. They could be hiding from a man that harmed them before. There's so many different instances that your privacy needs to be protected, right?
Yeah. All right. I think we can call it a day on that, unless we've got any comments. We got a few comments at the end of the day, 4 comments. Yeah. Carolyn fought for open. Every time doors closed keeps eyes from seeing. Carolyn jumped up and down. Protocols are made to keep people in order, not to keep order. Okay. Wow. This is when I wish I had a microphone here. Randy, I asked you, Randy, if you were like to come on, and you said you were. You know, it was not always easy for you, right? And 350 more, you could have identified that substance, then go to door to door. Yeah. They have the power to investigate, but not free search. Yeah, so they basically, if they, I'm presuming he's talking about MECP, they must have proof positive that it came from your factory before they come in.
Yeah, I do believe they've been stripped of some powers, though. They used to have the power to do that, and now they don't. So I believe some of their power has been taken away.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are, and I do thank everybody for being here. Any final words?
Nope, just supposed to be another nice day, and be going down to the Welland River and do a little bit more research today. And I'm going to narrow in even more. I hope they could. I'm going to ask the city if they could give me an axe to take off the lids of the sewers, and I'll start doing their job for them if they can't.
Whoa. Yeah.
Other than that, thanks, Niagara, and have a good day.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.